Welcome everybody to the Jaffrey Ranch Cooperative School District School Board meeting. Would you all join me in a pledge of allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do you have any changes to the agenda? We'll move on to public comments. Nick, do you want to provide information on how to make a public comment?
Yeah, of course. So this is School Board Secretary, Communication Coordinator, Nicholas Handy. I put the school board policy on public participation up on the screen for everybody to see. If you'd like to make a public comment, you're free to do so. Just make sure that you either understand the policy or you've had a chance to read it over. If you're digital, please use the hands raised feature on the bottom of the screen. We can address you from there. Please use first, last name, and town of residence before making your public comment. All right, I'm not seeing anybody. We do have a second public comment portion at the end of the meeting as well.
Public comments. We'll move on to the superintendent's report. Superintendent Duncan.
All right, so we're just going to cover a couple of topics tonight. One is the bi-weekly COVID-19 update having to do with local and state information this time around. And then also talk to you about some items having to do with distributive leadership that we've talked about in the past, and just give you some update on some progress. And then if there's anything else that is of interest, we can have a conversation. If we go to the first slide that has to do with just this, the numbers are a little bit different, but the graphs and the trajectory seems to be the same. For a little bit of time, a couple of weeks ago, maybe 3 to 4 weeks ago, the numbers started to go down, and they've continued to go up again in the state of New Hampshire. You can see that that green vaccine rate does actually tend to have a slight slant upward. And that is actually a little bit true for our communities as well, as we'll see a little bit later. But we still, across the state, are in the red across the board. Go to the next slide. Yeah. This is just something that is similar to what I had shared last time from the same site from the New Hampshire Department of Health Services. Just again, nothing's really changed in the area of the 0 to 19. Our population is the focus is there. If we were to look back at the last presentation and this one, you would see several more, however, in the category of infected across the state. We go to the next slide. This one right here, there is somehow those first numbers there, the Jaffrey and the Ringe ones with the active cases in the last 14 days. 3 and 7 is not correct, but the 18 and the 21 are correct for current active cases. I did pull up the site just a second ago when I saw that that was off. Currently, as of the latest information, in the last 14 days, there were 36 cases in Ringe, and there were 28 cases in Jaffrey. Jaffrey's vaccination percentage did go up 0.1%, and Ringe's went up 0.2% from last time. So little by little, you know, it changes a little bit. This is as of Friday's information. When I built this, I didn't have today's information. You can see numbers in quarantine, which is actually less than what we've had, which is nice to see by a long shot, because the majority of our individuals who have been out have been typically ill, but waiting for tests and things of that nature, and waiting for tests has been, you know, it takes a long time. People can get the home tests, and we can utilize those now, but sometimes they're not available. Other individuals that we've spoken with have also said that they don't feel qualified necessarily to use that home test and feel like it's reliable necessarily. So that's not our call per se. It's a parental call. But when you have people quarantining, in the sense of waiting for testing, that can take some time, sometimes 5, 6, 7 days. If they're quarantining because they're family members of people who are positive, that's another interesting dynamic that is happening within our district, where kids are missing a lot of school because they are close contacts with a positive family member. And and it's has often been the case, more than 50% of the time anyway, that when they are quarantining with a person who is positive, they themselves get positive, and then they have that much longer out. So that has been a difficult situation when it comes to our school age kids. Also, some adults have been in that situation with their own children, having to be taking care of them and so forth. We haven't had as much in the way of positive cases in JGS really this entire year. The middle school has had more than any other location, but has slowed down a little bit. And the high school probably is in that second category of the second least. But you can see that active cases right now would be the highest would be RMS, and RMS had that cluster in one of its grade levels where there was most likely there was spread within the facility. So we've looked into that situation, finding out why and what happened, and we feel confident with knowing what's taken place, and that it's something that shouldn't be repeatable in other locations, but the fact of the matter is it did happen. So the first time that happened in the last 2 years, where we did have a spread within the school. Then we have the absences not COVID related right there, but across the district 70, which was really lower than a lot of the days that we've had. And if we were to look at that same time, you could see that the middle school had the highest percentage out, around 7 or 7.5%. Everyone else was a little bit lower than that. So we compared those to some numbers in the past, and they're a little bit higher than last year, but not out of the realm. Probably have the same curve as last year, same shape of the curve, where the middle school was higher than the other ones. So if we go to the next matrix, that just again shows where we've been in that area. And if we go to the next slide, this is the time of year. We're going into the end of the first quarter, the beginning of the second quarter. And so we're getting together, we're reconvening the committee, the ad hoc committee for the reopening framework. There will likely be a few new members. There will be some people who have opted not to be part of that. And so we're still putting that together. I don't know if there's an update on this, Nick. If there is, you can let me know, but I believe it's either this coming Thursday or Monday. I know that we were trying to get the group together, and you were doing it by Google poll.
Yeah, I mean, I did a poll, and I sent it out a couple days ago, so I don't anticipate getting 100% participation based on what we have right now. I believe the meeting will be next Monday, but I'll double check before confirming that, with the committee. The deadline for them to make that decision was today. So,
okay. So their purpose, they're going to review the framework, review the matrix, review school data, review COVID-19 trends. That could be trends in the state, in the region. There are other schools that are nearby who have experienced a lot more. There are schools nearby that have had less. So looking at kind of what their policies are and so forth. There have been schools who have been unmasked in other parts of the state and have had a lot of spread. There have been schools that have been fully masked who have had a lot of spread. So it's a very interesting situation. It seems to be that we knew there would be more spread. That's what the literature said early on that was out there, that the Delta variant and perhaps maybe another variant that might be out there was going to spread more than the original. The recommendations, the goal would be to bring recommendations of any changes or the recommendation to remain to the school board, the next board meeting, so that we had a plan going forward into the next quarter. The next quarter is the winter kind of quarter. You know, things are going to start ramping up in that time frame. You know, around Christmas, people traveling. Also, it's the flu season, although we've had flu already. I will say that we had flu shots here for our teachers and support staff last week. So if they wanted to have them, but they could get the flu shot, they could get the booster shot for COVID, a bunch of different things that they could get at the exact same time. So a lot of people did that. And then that's what's happening in the area of illness and, you know, student absenteeism and so forth. And what will come back to the board next time will be a little more of a conversation than this right here. And then the last thing here is the progress on some of the teams. When we talk about distributive leadership, we've talked about this a little bit over the course of a couple of years, the belief that in order to have sustainable change and to make sure that it outlasts an individual or a group of individuals at, you know, various leadership roles, is that you get distributive leadership to take place, meaning both groups, the groups of people who are together making decisions and working to improve the organization is made up of the practitioners as well as the school-based leadership, with support from the district, but not like a strong, you know, happy to have your stamp of approval on everything. If it's good distributive leadership, it's always going to decide and make the better choices for the organization than one individual would. So we're getting those put into place. I met with a CIA team this year, today actually, before we had our session for an hour and a half, and we discussed the why it is where the group is what it is, meaning what's its purpose. And so we discussed the purpose of it, and we're working on that. We've done the same thing a little bit with the PD committee. That PD committee may morph into something a little bit further that's going to, yes.
Could you just give us the names of the CIA and the PD teams? What are those?
CIA is curriculum instruction and assessment. PD is professional development.
Thank you.
And so the professional development committee has been something that's been a long-standing committee in this district. But its practice has been to be more of a organizer or auditing group of people of people's portfolios of their professional development. The goal, we have a digital program to do a lot of that work right now, but the goal, it will have to do a little bit of that consistently moving forward, but not to the level of what it was. We'd like to have the professional development committee actually be responsible for research and finding the best professional development for schools, individuals, district, based upon recommendations for how we're moving forward. In the CIA team, the curriculum instruction assessment team, that team would, for instance, say, hey, we're interested in making certain that all of our teachers are empowered to be, you know, strong learning facilitators or something to that effect. What does that mean? It means that they need to understand the format of the curriculum. They need to understand best teaching practices within their areas and so forth. So how do we make sure that that takes place? The CIA team will say, hey, this is what we're looking for. This is what we want our teachers to have for professional development, or these are the outcomes we want. Professional development committee will say, okay, based upon the outcomes and the desire that you have for curriculum, for instruction, for use of data, we're going to find the best possible avenue for that. So is it going to be professional development that is going to be offered in small chunks on a weekly basis after school? Is it going to be something that's going to be infused into their PLCs, which is happening here a lot at this school? Is it that we use our professional development days in a specific way? Do we have people coming from out of state to come and support us with professional development? Are we able to use the professional people we have internally to do that? So finding the best way to get the best result. But one team's focusing on kind of the lifeblood, the professional development of everything. It could also span to professional development of custodians, instructional associates, and so forth, not just teachers. The CIA team is focused primarily on teachers and what goes on in the classroom. So very exciting group of people. They shared out why they wanted to be here. Very diverse, from the elementary to the high school and everything in between. And the CIA team, we learned last year when we piloted it that you couldn't have a successful group of people working on curriculum, another group working on instruction, another group working on assessment. It needs to be working all three at the exact same time because you can't separate them. Secondly, with the push forward of MTSSB, which is the multi-tiered systems of support for behavior and social emotional learning, we have part of our team is focused on SEL, so social emotional learning curriculum, and the bigger part of our team working on the academic side of things. So we have people who have come from the Leadership Academy and kind of joined in. We've had other people who have just been here for a while. We have people who have been at the school a year on the team. We have people who have been here for over 30 years on the team and everything in between. It's a really nice mix. And we'll probably be recruiting more for the professional development group. Yes.
How large are these two teams, Ruben?
They're manageable. 10 for the curriculum instruction assessment team. We would go as high as 15. But we have 10, because we're not forcing people to do these things, but they're a good group. And the PD right now is in a transition. So we're going to be in the business of trying to recruit. Right now we have like 5 but you're supposed to have probably 8 to 10. And so we have some work to do to get that up and going. But I think that the change is going to be positive. The individuals who were at the last meeting, which was last week, I think we're energized and we're interested in seeing how we could move forward. The goal for both of these, because if you're looking for anything sustainable, it needs to be really in policy. I don't mean school board policy, but I do mean school board adopted. So both of these groups this year are going to work on handbooks that talk about how they operate, what they're looking for in outcomes, what their role is, why they exist, and so forth as well, and timelines, all this kind of stuff. And then on an annual basis, those will be 2, because you didn't have enough of them to go through handbooks, right? But those handbooks will go to the school board for review and adoption, or no, I don't like the way this is going. I don't like the way this direction is. So you'll every year be able to kind of know what the direction is. But I do believe it is the most sustainable way to continuously improve curriculum instruction and assessment is not to have one person overseeing it, but to have a group of stakeholders who are cooperatively working together toward the same goal, the same why. They sign on for that and make sure it happens. So that's the idea, and it's based in research. Distributive leadership is a good model. So that's where we're at right now.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions for Ruben?
I have a question.
Yeah.
For the students who are out, whether they're ill or they're in quarantine, do we have a plan in place that they're getting the schoolwork that they need? Is that being addressed, especially when you talk about some of these kids being in quarantine for a longer period of time?
Mm-hmm.
able to access their schoolwork?
Yeah, so I need to do a little more exploration on that myself. But the answer, the short answer is that the Google, everyone's supposed to be having a Google Classroom, and that Google Classroom is supposed to be updated on a regular basis. So that the work is in that area. It doesn't mean, however, that there's a ton of instruction to go along with that. So that would be where the downfall would be. In the middle school in particular, but also the elementary school, but in the middle school in particular, like for instance, the 7th and 8th grade team I know has worked on setting goals with learners to get into Moby Max, which is a tutorial program for math, literacy, science, things like that. And so Wilda has just begun that type of goal setting. You know, that would be something that would have tutorial elements to it so that they could utilize that and continue on with some learning. And the math and some of the literacy. The math work that they're doing at the middle school is all online and hooked to things like Khan Academy and so forth. So there are tools to use. Nothing replaces the in-person instruction. So, but they probably have better access to work than say in years past where they've had, I'm sick. You call up and say, could you send home the assignments with his brother or something like that.
And I have one more question.
Yeah.
I don't know if we collect this data, but I'm wondering if we have these kids that have, these learners that have been out sick, have any of them been significantly ill? Do we have any information on that or any ability to collect that information?
Well, the information that I get from the nurses is that, I mean, so the answer is it's possible, right? But if it did happen, we have not been given that information. For the most part, actually, the symptoms that people have had for COVID have tended to be less powerful, I guess you could say, than some of the other things that are out. We almost know when someone goes out for testing, like, this person has these symptoms, that seems to be in line with these people who have come back negative and had this type of thing instead. And so cold, flu has happened on several occasions. I don't think we've seen a lot of heavy outcomes of COVID, but I've not heard of one.
Other questions? Okay, let's move on to the consent agenda. Any changes to the consent agenda? Have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda. I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Allison, second by Lisa. All in favor?
Alicia.
Alicia. Sorry.
It's okay. Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries 600. Let's go into action items. Proposed classification employees, some non-exempt.
So this is in order to hire people for a long-term sub, you need, by definition of a long-term sub, you need to be certified in the area that you're subbing for per the state of New Hampshire, the Department of Education. In calling around and finding out what other schools do, there are several schools that have things called permanent sub positions. And so a permanent sub is not necessarily an individual who is certified. They could be, but it wouldn't be certified in a specific area. We have substitutes who come and they choose to come on Mondays or they maybe a Thursday or something like that. A permanent sub would say, you know, you're pretty much going to need a substitute in your building every day. It would be better to have someone who has continuity with your learners, with your school, with knowing and you can utilize them in a variety of ways. So it's not just for substituting for a paraprofessional, it could be substituting for a teacher, it could be substituting for someone else. And so you'd have a lot more flexibility. In talking with our attorney, he said you would need to develop their own classification, as it doesn't really fit into any of the other ones. And you could choose to, do benefits any which way you want. This right here more closely aligns itself to the SAU non-exempt. That was a template we used to start from. It does not include holidays. It's purely the actual days that students are in school. It does not provide accumulation of sick days. The idea of this is that you need substitutes. You've got to give some leeway, but that you wouldn't accumulate them year after year after year after year. You'd have a set amount for that year, and then you move forward. The idea of a substitute is not to have someone accumulate 40 sick days and then suddenly you don't have a substitute for 40 of those days. That doesn't work. So to have in section 7 would be 10 sick days, 2 of which you could use for personal reasons is kind of how we put it. Kept bereavement leave very similar to everyone else. Can't touch jury duty or FMLA leave. And then this position, we felt that it would be a good idea to offer health insurance. There are ways to go around not offering, health insurance, but that kind of defeats the purpose of needing them for the certain number of hours that you have them for. And also, the job market's different than it used to be. So while our subs themselves don't get benefits through this, our long-term subs do have the opportunity for benefits if they want them, health benefits. Once again, the long-term subs, those are they're like a temporary employee. They're paid at $24.50 or $25 an hour. They need to hold a certification in a specific area. These individuals, it would be 18 or 19 an hour. I think it's 19 is what we said. And they would not have to hold certifications. They did not, we wouldn't use them that way, but they would be a reliable individual to be able to go around and be used for the purpose of anything that we needed to within the school setting. But before advertising or anything like that, we've got to be able to even have this type of category approved by the board first.
So would these individuals, I guess I have 2 questions. So the first would be, would these individuals be assigned to a school? Would they be district-wide to kind of fill the holes wherever they happen? That's my first question. And my second would be, how many of these individuals would we expect to employ?
Well, I mean, it's difficult to go and hire too many of them right now when you're already in a budget season and you have a certain amount of money. So to answer that second question, we'd have to look at what our trends are right now and where they're needed most, which partly goes to your first question in a second, and find out what our budget can handle for this. We're paying for subs anyway. If we can get them, we have, that. So this would come out of that substitute line, be a little more expensive certainly than a normal sub.
But the continuity.
Is worth a lot if you can get the right people in there. The goal, because of continuity sake, would be that they be at a building like elementary. JGS would need someone. RMS, definitely RMS this year. If I were going to put anyone in there, I'd put RMS first for this year. They've had the most difficult time with people having being fully staffed. But you'd want a minimum of 1 per building, ideally 2. And when I say per building, I consider middle school building and
Mhm.
high school building. We've been doing okay a lot of the time here this year at the middle school, high school. It's not been perfect. You know, we've had to have teachers subbing for other teachers and so forth. But we've had more substitutes available to us in this particular building this year than we have in the last 2 to 3 years. Elementary, we haven't been as fortunate, which is odd. It's usually the reverse. It's important to note that other districts in the area, everyone's dealing with the same issue of substitutes, right? So I know that Monadnock and Keene went into the paper and or went on record saying that they were going to increase their normal sub pay. And then I don't know if Monadnock is going to do this or if it was just Keene, but it may have been both. They may have agreed to go kind of do the same thing. If they stay for 50 days or whatever, they give them $1,000 bonus on top of it or $500 bonus or something to that effect. Rather pay someone consistently. This would be a more expensive person than what they've upped their, I think, sub rate to like 120, 100, somewhere in that 120 range, which is about 30 higher than what we currently have for our substitutes. This would obviously be a person who would be paid a little bit more than that. But again, when you consider we won't be giving bonuses for, you know, and things like that, it doesn't even out that way. I think Conval has, what was theirs that they had? Maybe theirs was just like allowing school board members to substitute. I think that was one thing that they had done. I don't know if they've changed their rates or anything like that. I think Messina did do something with their rate change, but I haven't confirmed that with Chris Martin over there, Dr. Martin. But someone had told me that they had increased their rates. So substitutes are a big deal. Obviously, being fully staffed is even a bigger deal. We're fortunate that from a professional staff level, we're pretty much there, which is better off than a lot of places in the area. From a fully staffed, well, if you're talking about associates and things like that, we're not fully staffed. We're in the same predicament that a lot of other places are in right now.
Question.
Mhm.
So under the heading of substitutes, we would have this role and theoretically a job description. And
Yes, I have a job description,
practices,
yep.
and so there would be some standardization where the let's say a person is a I don't know what you're calling it, permanent sub.
Permanent sub.
Permanent sub.
Yep,
I want to be clear
that's
about
what
that.
most places call it.
Right, okay, permanent sub, and they're at JGS, and so a call doesn't have to be made at 6 o'clock in the morning that says, hey, we need you in here, you're gonna be in first grade, and then tomorrow they get a call and, hey, now we need you in second grade, like the person is, I mean, they might.
They go to work
Right.
and they find out the
Where they-
latest when they walk in,
Right,
as what their assignment is.
and it-
They might already know their assignment.
right, so,
Mhm.
but then there's another category, which is considered a long-term sub, say, for a maternity leave or a
Yes.
maternity leave or something like that.
That's correct.
So that would be a different category with a different set of parameters.
Yep, those are by definition how we do it here. They're temporary employees, so they're what was formerly known as a green sheet.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I've really been a proponent of this for a long time, particularly around the continuity concerns and the stability and security that you have when you have a pool to go to on a very regular basis that's not competing with other things going on a daily basis, that you have more continuity. I think it's great if I would be very interested to find out how many of our current subs would be interested in this kind of a role. And in terms of the, you know, how it depletes our
Yeah.
on-call subs. But I think this is a terrific step forward for a lot of reasons, and I'm glad to see it come forward.
Other questions or comments?
Yes, I guess one of the primary things here is that the person seeking this position would have to commit to the 177 days and the full time.
Yeah, it's a full-time school year.
Right, right.
You know, full-time position, benefited. Yeah, they would have a contract like other people or notice of intent to employ or whatever it is that we
Yeah.
put out there. And yeah, it will be an employee for the school for the year. Could be, like I said, could be a person who's certified, doesn't want to have the, all the duties of having to grade and go, do everything at home and so forth. This person, they're coming here, they do their job, they leave.
Right.
That's actually, if you like working with, a pretty dynamic system and with a lot of different types of people, it's a great job, actually. I used to work with one back in Exeter. He was a permanent sub and extraordinarily valuable to the organization.
Other questions, comments?
Do you need a motion?
I wanted to ask,
Mhm.
is what you're looking for is support for the concept and principle in the board?
What I'm looking for is an adoption of the non-exempt employee benefits. Because if I have that category, that does two things. It provides, yeah, we like the concept, but also it allows us to move forward. Without that, we don't have a category for this. We can't just hire permanent subs without anything to define them as.
But you need a job description or a posting?
I have a job description. Yeah.
We haven't seen it.
Okay.
So I would go on record as saying, from a consensus perspective, I support it.
Mhm.
And I would support the benefits package, but at this point in time, I have some questions that I would like to see as part of the proposal for this position, a position description.
Does it differ widely from our existing description of what a sub would do?
If I were to send this to Nick and have him place it up there, would you want to do that now, or is that not something we want to do?
That's fine with me. I just feel that,
Let's do it.
if I'm approving the benefits for something, I want to know what it is I'm approving for.
Sure. Mhm. Okay, so you should have it coming to your mail.
I'll put it up as soon as I have it.
Sure.
Okay, while we're waiting for that, do you have any other board committee updates? John?
I think the only update I would give is that we do have a need to move to do some assessment on the multiple projects that we have going on. And I hope to organize a facilities committee or schedule a facilities committee meeting between now and the next meeting. Ruben mentioned that we're still waiting on some prices on the bathrooms and on the HVAC project. The JGS project started today. And so there's some forward movement there. And Ruben, I don't know if you have any other things you would want to add on facilities.
No, just that we are waiting for EEI to get us back kind of a quote, basically of, we had been a walk around with all of the bathrooms and already kind of knew what the price range was for the continued HVAC work. But no, they started at JGS for the HVAC work. I believe today was the day it was supposed to happen. They'd gone last week to discuss how some of the rooms were going to temporarily move so that work can be done in one of the hallways. I think it's like the upper hallway, third grade is where it would be. So something of a similar nature is going to happen at RMS. No earlier than November, early November, but probably closer to the beginning of December now. And there will be 2 classes, depending how you look at it, 3 displaced at RMS. Basically what will happen is a couple classes, art and technology will go on a cart to the different places. And then one of the, I believe it's first grade or second grade teachers, it could be whatever Allison Mars class is, first or second grade, is going to be moving to where the computer lab is for a period of time so that they can start the work that they need to do over there for about 2 or 3 weeks. Both schools, it's about 2 or 3 weeks.
Thank you.
Do you have any other committee updates?
Goals Committee is going to meet on the 25th.
Yep, Monday.
Wellness committee meets, I think, November 1st.
Thursday, we have a finance committee meeting. Any others?
Policy will meet on the 28th.
And Mr. Dustin is going to be the liaison to the board for the education committee. And is going to be meeting with the education committee chair soon. Gonna look into that. And to be able to sketch out the agendas for the entire year. So that we can report out on progress and outcomes.
Okay, is that the description there?
Yes, it is. I don't know if you want me to just slowly scroll through this or if you want to speak to it.
Well, yeah, so I think if we go down to the duties and responsibilities, it's a 1-pager. Maybe if we can decrease it from 100% to maybe like 80%. You can see it all at one time. There you go. So the idea is that the permanent sub role is a floating position covering teacher, instructional associates, or school secretary absences on a short-term temporary basis in their respective schools. So their respective schools is the answer to your question, Alicia. Duties and responsibilities may include, so there are duties and responsibilities for a teacher substitute, which are current, what they typically are, instructional associate substitute, and school secretary substitute. So those are the primary areas we have people out, and they're the areas that are necessary for the running of the school. So this person's a versatile individual. So, I think taking attendance, make sure that things are kept orderly, clean. They're responsible for basically management and the safety of students. The instructional associates, it gets a little more of it. They're a kind of an assistant to the teacher. Their focus is on IEPs, sometimes 504 plans. It all depends on the situation, but typically individual education plans. Support the teacher with whatever it is they need in order to implement the lessons of that day for the purpose of supporting the learner or learners they're kind of assigned with. Usually those, again, are for the purpose of meeting IEP requirements and so forth and needs of students. And then the school secretary substitute. Just perform the standard secretarial tasks. Could be clerical aid as well for that matter, but it's just kind of secretarial, clerical in that standpoint, so they could be taking attendance. Maybe some other types of jobs, calling individuals to schedule appointments, maintain files, prepare documents, do some photocopying, things of that nature.
So I'm sorry, I thought this was a teacher substitute. It was a permanent substitute for teachers. That job description to me looks like a very, very broad skill set.
Mhm.
I don't know where we're going to find one person that has all those skills. We have difficulty finding teachers or instructional associates, let alone someone with all those skills. And if we're not looking for somebody with all those skills, then what we're looking for is a warm body to fill in when somebody's absent. I'm sorry if I,
So this to me looks different from a long-term sub role that would be filling a teacher role that would be specified with their skill sets and that where you have to be certified or like having some experience in that specific curriculum. So this is different from long-term sub. This is a school-wide go-to person.
I understand. Okay, here's what I thought we were trying to do. We had difficulty finding substitute teachers
Mhm.
when we needed them because we call in the morning and it's difficult to find one. So rather than doing that, we were going to have our own substitute in-house who would float, because we always have somebody out. So they would float from one classroom to the next, filling in for whoever was happened to be absent that day. And I thought that was a full-time position because I don't know of a day where we haven't had somebody out.
Mhm.
Okay. I did not know that we were also going to try to sub for instructional associates. And I did not know that because of the student services knowledge that they have to do that. Okay, and also the same thing with the school secretary. I mean, those are totally different jobs and have totally different job requirements, skill requirements
Mhm.
than a teacher would have, at least in my mind. I wouldn't expect the same person to know all of that. So from my perspective, I'm kind of wondering why we would need someone with those skills if we're always going to have a teacher out anyway. So we're always going to need a substitute teacher across the school district someplace.
So the way I would look at it is this, is that, yeah, definitely the substitute teacher is the first priority. So that's what the person will be doing 90, 85, 90% of the time. If for whatever reason you did not have a need, however, on that day for a substitute teacher or a period of time, whatever, there might be other things that this person can do that are needs. So this allows for people to understand that you're not just necessarily only subbing for teachers, but if for whatever reason that's not a necessity for that day or that time period, we will have we'll have other places for you to be doing work within the school setting to keep us moving forward. What are those primary areas? Certainly instructional associate substitute, working with students, could be helping to provide some supports in those areas, even if there's not a substitute role there. Helping the school secretary or clerical aides to make sure that the running of the school and the attendance and everything is getting correct. It could be even doing the hall duty to make sure that things are monitored properly. But the idea is, I mean, if you have the skills to be a substitute teacher, you typically have the skills to be doing the instructional associate piece. Both require understanding of special ed at some level, probably maybe not when they start, but certainly as they get going. And then you're correct that the school secretary piece is a different skill set for the most part, but there are possibly some pieces that if someone's out, they can help get some of those jobs done in those areas. But it would be for the primary role, which is why it was first, to have the teacher substitute, but it would be something that could that, again, if you advertise it as a teacher substitute, then if you have no need for that, and you have other things that you need to be doing in the facility, you would want to make sure that they understand that their job could be very different at different times.
And is my understanding that this is a school-specific role? They would not be asked to go to another school, even if there was high need?
Well, that's how it's designed. I think we could, in theory, we could ask them to go to another school if there were high need.
So,
We've been able to do that with other employees, but it's not something that you would do on a regular basis.
so correct me if I'm wrong here. What I heard was we need a permanent sub because we have difficulty finding subs and we have teachers absent. But in case we don't need a permanent sub, there are some additional things we want this person to be able to do. That's what I'm hearing. Which means to me that you really don't need a full-time sub.
Yeah, I don't think,
If
I don't
I,
even understand how you would view that from what I said, but okay.
if I
Because
may,
Yeah.
Excuse me, because
Charlie, I'm hearing things a little bit differently than you're
Okay.
hearing them. And, certainly having a warm body is sometimes important, but it sounds like we're looking for a capable mind as well. Somebody who may not be able to become a school secretary, but could certainly show up and do some attendance duties if that was important, or who could fill in and student services, obviously not at the same level as an experienced instructional associate, but with guidance from the student services teacher, perhaps, fill the gap. And depending on the need that has to be filled, I could even see a situation where it would be more critical to have that person in the administrative office or in the student services division than a substitute role.
I could see a situation where it might be more important in the maintenance staff or the custodial staff on certain days because of certain leaks that require cleanup and things of that nature. But what I'm,
True, but you'd be taking it to a different level if you asked them to go.
well, but the job description is taking it to a different level. Teachers substitute, I understand. Instructional associate, I could probably live with that. But when we're talking to going into into things like secretaries and so forth, that implies to me that you may not need a teacher substitute on a given day. In a school, you may not need an instructional associate substitute on a given day in a school. So we have this warm body that we need to find something for them to do. That's what I'm hearing, okay? And if
I'm hearing something a little bit different.
if that is the case, then I'm saying we don't really need a person to do that because we can survive a day without a permanent sub.
If somebody doesn't show up for school, or if there's a question about whether someone's on quarantine, we have a process in place, right, to follow up, making calls, to make sure that that student, if there's a gap there, isn't that a reasonable thing for someone with a teacher substitute set of skills to perhaps jump in and take care of?
We have a system today for a substitute teacher. We have a system today that we ask teachers to substitute for other teachers. So we have systems in place to make that happen. And my understanding is the reason we want to add another job description or another job, okay, is because we need something more than that, because that's not satisfying our need. And if it's not satisfying our need and a permanent sub will satisfy our need, then I'm all for it. But a permanent sub to me means, hey, we need to have someone there who's going to be able to substitute. And because the system we have right now isn't working fully.
And that would be accurate.
And I'm okay with that. I'm fine with that. But when we get to the point of saying, well, if there's ever an instance where a secretary is out, we need help there, we can have this person plug in. And in my mindset, that's not the scope of what we're really, the problem we're trying to address. We're not trying to address a problem of a secretarial absence. We're trying to address the problem of a teacher absence or an instructional associate absence. I don't know if anybody understands what I'm saying or not. From my perspective,
I understand.
there's a big difference between the tasks of the teacher substitute and a task of the school secretary substitute.
I think that's where I'm having, so I'm not seeing that big of a difference. So in the elementary schools that I work at, the secretarial and clerical staff are as much a part of the community and vitally part of what happens minute to minute in the school. And what this does is cover those times where at the end of the day, you know, there's availability, but the school secretary has to go to a dentist appointment at 2 o'clock. Great, this person can come in and cover. It's part of their job description. This covers times that might just be needed. It's not saying you're taking over for maternity leave, though it could happen. This is saying, you know, all hands on deck. And the school secretary is fully as much a part of the vibrant community and the high needs. And we need to know that there's somebody that we've trained that's not just coming in cold off the street, that knows the routines, which is crucial, that knows the families, knows the kids, front face. This is a helpful role to have somebody being able to be trained and to have the ability to do. I don't see it as a separate thing from the instructional associate or the teacher. It's simply part of this small community we have.
I think everybody's just part of a small community.
I'm not here.
But I think that if you expect a person to sit down in a secretary's chair who hasn't sat there in 20, 30 days and be effective, I have never seen that happen. Especially if you only sub for the secretary maybe once, twice, 3 times a year. You might as well, you know, not even sub her at all because you're not even going to know where she keeps her stuff in the file cabinet. So, and if I'm going to, and I don't support training someone to do a secretarial job, and also being a teacher. So, I mean, if the board wants to approve it, that's up to the board. Okay, it's a pleasure of the board. I personally do not think that a school secretary substitute is appropriate to be in a job description for a teacher substitute if we want to hire someone to substitute for teachers. If the need is substituting for a teacher, then let's leave it as teacher substitute, maybe instructional associate. But clearly, if we're going to add secretarial substitute, we might as well add anybody in there. Just say substitute as otherwise assigned. Forget about secretary, just say substitute is otherwise assigned, and then you can use them for any position.
I was gonna say, what if the language was clerical duties instead of that official title of school secretary, which is a very complicated and complex task. If the idea is that if perchance there's a day when everybody is healthy, you know, maybe in May and everybody's there and we don't need a substitute and we don't need an extra aide, could this person be doing clerical tasks instead of carrying that heavier title of school secretary?
Or during the lunch hour. You know, could they do some other tasks that are necessary for the running of the building?
Right.
If that were available, that type of thing. It's kind of the idea. So, I mean, what I hear is the structure of this, the intent is, in the need is teacher substitutes. Obviously, we have some other needs here and there. The intent is to make sure that this person, that the administration has flexibility with the use of this individual to implement that person during the day to get things done the way that he or she, for the moment that is most important. So we figured we would let the person who's applying know that they could be doing some clerical skills, tasks, sorry. Um, So we could restructure this. This is just a draft anyway. I haven't approved it. But to fit it so that it wasn't so specific to like a school secretary substitute. The purpose was just to say, you need to be ready to be able to fit into these areas is kind of the idea.
I think we have other job descriptions that say and other duties is assigned.
Yep.
Because we expect people to do 99.9% of their time doing a specific job. And there may be other times when they have to do other things, but that's a very small portion and it's an unexpected thing and it's probably an ill-defined thing because you can't define everything. So I understand that part of job descriptions. But this one specifically calls out a position substitute that I do not agree with. So that's where I'm at. But it's up to the pleasure of the board.
Yeah, I actually think it makes sense to keep some sort of clerical type process. When I read that, I think about exactly what Christine described and also what Lisa mentioned at the end of the day. I went to pick up my kids one day and the school secretary had left for the day and the principal had to help with the dismissal of my children. So I think that those situations do arise maybe more frequently than we are aware of. And I think it would be valuable if that individual were not needed in an instructional role to be able to pull them to something more clerical in nature. Maybe there is also value in keeping that, but also other duties as assigned as well. Who knows what else comes up? It's a school, let's be honest. The toilets could need to be plunged too. Especially around this.
I confess, I was actually, I didn't even notice the school secretary when you started talking about it. I was more concerned with the very first one and wondered why a high school graduate would be designated to assign homework and compile reports for students. That one concerned me. I can understand that for a long-term sub that again has to be certifiable in the curriculum area that they're designated to be for. And I agree for giving a good deal of money to a permanent sub. I want this job, but I would not want to have them assigning homework and creating the very next line is that they're adhering to the curriculum lesson plans created and assigned by the teacher. I think if you got rid of that first line, unless it's really important to you that they do homework, I think adhering to the curriculum that says it all. You're adhering to what the teacher wants them to do. If that means you're going to tell them to do this homework assignment, great. But I don't think we want high school students creating homework assignments for kids and grading them according to our competency-based grading system and compiling all the reports and what, I don't know. That was what I caught on to.
A good point.
Sorry to nitpick. I know you.
I'd like to make a motion that we move forward with the sub non-exempt employee benefits as outlined in the rules provided to us today.
Would like to hear the motion again, please?
Yes, I would like to move forward with a motion that approves the sub non-exempt employee benefits as presented today in the position of permanent substitute in the areas of teaching, instructional associates, and clerical or secretary.
I second Patty's motion.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Abstain, 0. Motion carries 5-0.
What I will do is take the feedback from this group right here, because like I said, we have finalized that job description and made some changes so that there's a clear focus on where the desired work is, and to make sure that there's also some flexibility when needed.
Okay, public comments next.
All right, we're back to public comments, part 2. So I'll throw the policy back up there again. Like I said before, If you're digital, use the hand raise feature at the bottom of the screen of your phone. We can address you there. Use your first name, last name, and town of residence before making your comment, and just make sure you adhere to the policy. All right, I'm not seeing anybody.
Okay, if there are no public comments, let's move on. To board matters, do we have any board matters?
Yes.
John?
I'd just like to thank you for going over to the Kidder conference today, Charlie. I know it's something that you've done pretty regularly. I myself have had 2 opportunities to do that, I believe. And I know that you bring back knowledge from those. I have also. In other words, the attorneys and school officials and the representatives from our, the name is escaping me, but the group that manages all of our insurance and other things. They're very helpful. And I know the 2 times I went, I felt really, I really had an opportunity to learn a lot. Very fun experience too. And the reason I want to mention it is because for those of you who have never gone to a Kidder conference, it's only once a year, so it's a year from now, but I hope you'll consider it. I believe the district picks up the cost. You've got to get yourself there to Concord early in the morning, but they take very good care of you. Generally provide coffee and lunch and everything else, and it's just a real professional opportunity. And you come away feeling like you've learned more about some topics that were important. So, and thank you again, Charlie.
And I would encourage everyone to go if you have the opportunity. I was able to attend, there were altogether 12 different subjects that were covered in the breakout rooms. I was able to attend 6 of them, and they're all presented by attorneys, and they're school attorneys, and they're different subjects, and mostly it pertains to the law and what changes in the law and what requirements are under the law. So if you have any questions about the law and any particular subject, there are plenty of attorneys there that will give you an answer. And sometimes the 2 attorneys won't agree, but it's interesting that you will get an answer. So I would recommend that people go if you have the time, and it's well worth it. Okay, any other board matters?
I just wanted to point out that the fall athletic schedule will be wrapping up before our next school board meeting. So I wanted to congratulate all our athletes for their efforts on behalf of the whole school, whether it be in golf or soccer or field hockey or cross country. And we will have a team in the playoffs. So congratulations to the boys varsity team. Their record is 11-2-2. And before we meet again, they will be going through playoffs representing Joffrey Ridge. So kudos to them and their coaches.
Thank you, Patty. I'm sure we wish them all good luck.
And congratulations to the volleyball team for having their first home
First
game
home
that they
game
had.
today.
Yep. Toward the end of the season, but we were able to get the posts in the floor and fixed and all that ready to go.
All right, other board matters? Okay, any future items? I notice we have an org chart. Thank you, Superintendent. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion made by Christine, second by Alicia. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.